Hey, so I'm back, and I'm actually doing sort of an addendum to the video I posted all of 20 minutes ago about Schrodinger's Rapist. The reason for it being is that I don't want to delete the other one because I said a lot of the things that I think needed to be said, but I realized I wanted to clarify a couple points as well, so rather than trying to redo a whole new video, I decided to just do sort of an addition. Anyway, so one thing that I feel the need to mention is that whole idea of Schrodinger's Rapist and the idea, that women, whenever they go out with a man for the first time, or not even the first time, for the first couple of times, or whenever they meet somebody for the first time, they have this feeling of them being both, a rapist and not a rapist. One thing I feel the need to mention is this isn't something that necessarily happens consciously, which is why, a lot of women will say, oh no, absolutely not, I don't constantly live in fear. And it's true, we don't actually constantly live in fear. This isn't something we're aware of all of the time. I mean, you can go through your day and not necessarily be thinking of it in that way and thinking, oh my god, every single strange male I see is going to potentially rape me. It's more of a subconscious idea that reflects in how we act, and it has to do with those same rules that I mentioned before, which is basically, rules of engagement, rules of behavior that women follow in order to avoid sexual assault. And it's basically something that's tied into that idea. And it also explains why in certain situations, even though it might seem completely innocent to an observer, actually can make a woman feel very uncomfortable. This goes together a lot with what happened way back when, that whole elevator gate thing. What a lot of people fail to understand is a woman in that position, she might not necessarily be looking at the guy going, oh my god, he's going to rape me. It's more the idea of, oh my god, what if he decides he is going to? Is this a situation where I'm safe? And if the answer to that is no, if the answer to that is I don't know how to get away, I can think of like 30 ways in which this is going to end really, really badly for me, then she's not going to be comfortable. And if she's not going to be comfortable, chances are she's not going to respond favorably to your attempts at discussion or even just to your flirtation. Because at that point, she's thinking of how she can get out of there as fast as possible in order to avoid anything wrong happening. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, it's an elevator in a hotel, it's brightly lit, it's all that, but think about what an elevator is. It's an enclosed space that has the potential to stop. It's not necessarily usually well regulated. There isn't always, cameras there. And even if they are, those cameras aren't always watched. And what if the camera belongs to somebody who's friends with the person who's, or, what if the person watching the camera is friends with the person who's in the elevator with you? The thing is a situation like that, you feel trapped because you can't run away. And that instinct of fight or flight, it is ingrained in every human being. And in that kind of situation, you look at that and you have to evaluate, okay, fight or flight. Well, my flight is cut off. Am I going to have to fight? And if you're looking at a situation like that, I don't want to have to be thinking about, oh my god, am I going to have to fight my way out of here? So if you keep your distance from me and you don't make me think that, then I'm going to be a little bit more comfortable. Now, just to sort of as an explanation, like, I'm one of those people, I will talk to people on the elevator, no problem. I like talking to strangers. I'm in a lot of situations, actually, where I talk to people probably even when I shouldn't. My parents despaired over the fact that the don't talk to strangers rule never really got through to me. That being said, even though I will often talk to the stranger on the elevator, I'm still not 100% comfortable on the elevator. In fact, my talking to them is almost a symptom of the fact that I feel uncomfortable, because I think to myself, maybe if I talk to them, maybe if I can get that idea from them that they aren't that kind of person, then maybe I won't be so terrified. One thing I feel the need to mention is that random squeaking noise you're hearing in the background is this little octopus toy that my dog seems to decide now is the appropriate time to be squeaking it. Anyway, so it's, it's not something that exists consciously. If I look at a guy and I think, heck, I want to go out with him, I'm not necessarily thinking, but he could also be a potential rapist. It doesn't exactly, those thoughts don't formulate, where you're noticing them. What will happen, though, is if I decide to approach that guy and, start a discussion with him and suggest a date, I'm probably not going to say, hey, you want to go back to my place, or hey, do you want to do this? Chances are I'll say, hey, do you want to go grab a cup of coffee? And the idea there behind that being is, I want to get to know him more. Now, if you ask a woman why she does that, she says, well, I don't know him that well. So you could get to know him just as easily in your apartment. Yeah, but, it's not a good idea to invite a stranger into your apartment. Well, why? Well, because you never really know what kind of person he is. Well, what kind of person could he be? What are you afraid of? And it's only then, that a lot of women will say, oh, yeah, I'm afraid he might be a rapist. And it's sort of that thought process. See, like, if you just ask them straight out, do you think this guy's a rapist? She's going to say, no. Okay, well, are you going to invite him back to your place by yourself just immediately? Well, no. Well, why? Well, because that's just silly. But why? It's that same idea. It's not something that's conscious. It's something that's very subconscious. But it also, like I said, explains why, in certain situations it's really uncomfortable. Now, there's a really good blog post, actually, called Schrodinger's Rapist, in which the person writing it writes, how there might be certain cues that women read that, put things on red alert. And one of them could even just be, that the guy just really chooses a bad time to approach you. I mean, for example, if you're at a funeral and you're crying, and a guy, you're at your mother's funeral and you're crying, and a guy comes up to you and says, hey, you want to grab a cup of coffee sometime? You're looking at him going, okay, creepo. Not going out with him. And that's an extreme idea. But a less extreme of that is also when you're in a situation where you might feel really uncomfortable. I mean, let's say you're walking home from work and it's late at night and it's winter and you're all alone and it's a deserted parking lot. And you start talking, and someone starts walking, behind you. Eventually they catch up to you, and then they start up a conversation. That's not necessarily the moment when you want to be asking someone out, or even just making that kind of idea, because chances are she's feeling a little bit uptight, and she's thinking to herself, okay, and it might not even be anything about what you're doing, but it might just be the situation itself, because she's already in a state where she's a little bit worried about her safety because it's dark out. She can't necessarily see where she's going. It's not well lit. There's not a lot of people around. In the back of her mind, this is the dark alley mentality. And at that moment, you're approaching her and you talking to her just gets thrown into that. And it's that, basically. It's that idea of, if you want to show you're a nice guy, if you want to actually have a better chance of getting to go out with a girl or getting to know her, and you are actually a decent human being, then you have to basically look at those cues and experience empathy. Put yourself in that position. If I was a girl, if I had to deal with the idea that if anything were to happen to me, chances are I wouldn't be believed, that I could get really seriously hurt, that I'm facing some severe danger, would I feel comfortable right now with someone who I don't know talking to me? Now, a lot of people, when they put themselves in that position, they say, oh, well, yes, she'd feel perfectly comfortable talking to me because I'm a nice guy, and I'll put her at ease and she'll think that there's someone looking over her shoulder. What you don't realize is, I have no way of knowing you're a nice guy. I have, even a few minutes of conversation with you, that doesn't necessarily tell me anything. What it does tell me is it's this random stranger in a dark parking lot that this was the appropriate moment to approach me. Why not wait until we're in a well-lit lobby? It's that kind of idea. Or, it's not going to get much better than necessarily, walking 2 meters behind me and you're just going to go. You're not going to make me feel any better doing that way either. I mean, the conversation might even be helpful at that point. It's just not necessarily a conversation which you're saying, hey, do you want to go grab a cup of coffee up in my hotel room? That's basically when you're basically giving her the cues that you're a nice guy. But don't put any kind of pressure on her to try to decide at that moment whether or not she wants to put herself in a position where you could hurt her. Does that make a bit more sense? I'm also looking at the only guy in the room right now. Does that make sense? Like, am I being clear here?
I think so. You know, let's talk topic.
Okay. We'll talk about that later. I'm actually curious why you think it's off topic, but yeah. Anyway, so that's something that I think needs to be clarified, is a lot of people are looking at that and are like, well, that's a really sad way to live, to think that every woman thinks that every man is, potential rapist. And it's just like, not necessarily because it's not something we're necessarily conscious of. It's not something we're aware of 24/7. You know, it's something that happens. There might be times that brings that a little bit more to our attention, but it's something that's more obvious in the way that we act and the way that we feel in certain situations, more than it actually has to do with the way we actually think, you know, or at least consciously think. So I hope that helps a little bit more. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them. I'll try to answer them if they're legitimate. Yeah, so thanks very much, and have a great day.